Hello and welcome to Study Sessions. My name is Mr. Boff. In today's episode, we're looking at Roger from William Golding's Lord of the Flies, but we're doing something that perhaps we've not done explicitly in previous episodes. We're going to be making connections between quotations, and between quotations that are taken from the beginning, the middle, and the end of the novel. This is something we really want to be doing in our essays in the exam. It's going to make our essays much more successful, much more academic, and also demonstrate that we understand how William Golding, through vocabulary choices, through language choices, is not only shaping our understanding of Roger, but also conveying those key themes, key ideas, and key messages through the character, through word level choices. Okay? Now, we're going to start with the stone throwing incident, okay, where Roger throws stones at Henry, one of the little uns, but at the moment he's throwing to miss. So I read the full quotation and then we'll really zoom in on some of the key language. Roger stooped, picked up a stone, aimed and threw it at Henry, threw it to miss. The stone, that token of preposterous time, bounced 5 yards to Henry's right and fell in the water. Roger gathered a handful of stones and began to throw them. Yet there was a space round Henry, perhaps 6 yards in diameter, into which he dare not throw. Here, invisible yet strong, was the taboo of the old life. Round the squatting child was the protection of parents and school and policemen and the law. Roger's arm was conditioned by a civilization that knew nothing of him and was in ruins. So, he throws, but he throws to miss. At this stage, he is throwing stones, which gives us something of an indication of what Roger is all about, but at the moment he's throwing to miss. He's not actually hitting Henry. Now, we know what happens with stones and boulders and Roger and Piggy. We know soon, or at least by the end of the book, he's going to be throwing or levering off boulders with the full intention to hit and to hurt and to kill. But for now, he's throwing to miss. And it's worth thinking about why that is. And Golding tells us, the narrator tells us, there's a space around Henry into which he dares not throw. Interesting, dare not throw. There is that suggestion that he doesn't dare because he fears admonishment, he fears punishment. So we can think about his moral development here. Why is he not throwing a stone? He's not throwing the stones, or he's not throwing the stone because he knows it's the wrong thing to do. It's because of a fear of punishment. He doesn't dare to do it yet, okay? And what is surrounding, almost like a force field, invisible yet strong, was the taboo of the old life. Now, a taboo is a topic or an action that is considered so socially unacceptable. It's unmentionable, okay? It's utterly unacceptable. That taboo of the old life, utterly unacceptable to throw stones at children. It's clear, though, Roger does want to throw the stones, but it's the taboo of the old life. The old life reminding us, of course, of his life pre-island, okay, back in England, back in Britain. And so that protection that surrounds Henry, the squatting child, the protection of parents, school, policemen, the law, all of these figures of authority, but also figures that can provide or give out punishment. I think that's quite important. So it is fear of punishment rather than any sort of moral sense of right and wrong, any sense of morality that prevents Roger from throwing stones and actually, at this stage of the book, hitting Henry. Now, I love the next line. I think there's so much to it. So Roger's arm was conditioned by a civilization that knew nothing of him and was in ruins. So much going on in that single sentence. So Roger's arm, not Roger's brain, not Roger's mind, not Roger's moral sense, Roger's arm, almost as if it's a separate part of him. He's trained. He is, to use a very important word in the world of psychology, conditioned. It's the kind of thing that you might do with a dog. Okay, you might condition a dog to sit on request. Conditioned doesn't mean has sort of learned a lesson. Okay, it means trained more like an animal. Okay, it's a word that we would apply to animals, conditioning an animal rather than conditioning a human. Okay, and it's by a civilization that is all the way back in Britain that knew nothing of him. Now, I love this. Knew nothing of him. On the one hand, there is a sense in which, because he's such a furtive boy, that people haven't really understood what Roger's all about. But also, I think maybe Golding there is critiquing the complacent, even somewhat sort of jingoistic idea that, British schoolboys don't do this sort of thing, that people in Britain are particularly and uniquely civilized. That there's a sense in which the civilization that knew nothing of Roger has not really had to face up or engage in the necessary and painful self-reflection that civilizations produce people like Roger, and the British civilization, if you want to call it that, has produced someone like Roger. It's almost that sense in which British society doesn't want to kind of examine itself too closely, lest it be confronted with the truth, which is that there are plenty of Rogers lurking amidst that supposed civilization. And it's a civilization, of course, Golding reminding us of what's going on. The backdrop to the novel is in ruins. Okay, where the backdrop of the book is nuclear apocalypse. It's total annihilation and destruction. Something we'll be forced to confront again by the end of the book when the naval officer turns up. So, this sense in which, yes, Roger is engaging in unpleasant behaviour here, although of course he's throwing to miss. There's really terrible things going on off the island. It's not as if this is one kind of monstrous little island in a otherwise sort of utopian world. In fact, quite the opposite. The island itself is a microcosm of a world that is in ruins. Okay, and that's the adult world. So the world of parents, school, policemen, and the law has still produced nuclear apocalypse. I want to move on now to the next quotation, and it relates to the moment when the boys sadistically and in a horrifyingly sexualized way kill the mothering sow. Now, I'm going to give you the full quotation, and again, we'll think about Roger's involvement in this moment. Here, struck down by the heat, the sow fell, and the hunters hurled themselves at her. This dreadful eruption from an unknown world made her frantic. She squealed and bucked, and the air was full of sweat and noise, and blood and terror. Roger ran round the heap, prodding with his spear whenever pig flesh appeared. Jack was on top of the sow, stabbing downward with his knife. Roger found a lodgment for his point and began to push till he was leaning with his whole weight. The spear moved forward inch by inch, and the terrified squealing became a high-pitched scream. Then Jack found the throat, and the hot blood spouted over his hands. The sow collapsed under them, and they were heavy and fulfilled upon her. The butterflies still danced, preoccupied, in the centre of the clearing. And then, infamously, Roger declares what he's done with the spear, finding a lodgment. He says, right up her ass, okay? So we've got this, and it's difficult to think about this too much in some ways because we are apparently dealing with children, but what we've got here is in effect, a sexualized slaughter of the sow. It's redolent of a rape scene in many ways, in the way that both the sow is feminized and in fact humanized. Notice the pronoun her used all the way throughout, not what we might come across like it might be more normal. Okay, it rather than her. Golding, I think, purposefully uses the pronoun her. Look at Roger's involvement. Prodding with his spear whenever pig flesh appeared. Okay, Roger found a lodgment and began to push till he was leaning with his whole weight. Okay, and then he sort of celebrates that when he says right up her ass. Okay, this is Roger now in the sort of full flowering of his sadism. This is the killing of the sow that foreshadows, which we'll come to later on in the episode, the killing of Piggy. But we can see that he's gone from throwing stones, but his arm is conditioned. He can't quite throw them to actually hit Henry. He's starting to miss. And that there's still that protection of parents and school, the policeman and the law. He still dare not throw. That, by this stage, the killing of the sow has now utterly faded away. Okay? There seems to be no inhibitions. Those taboos of the old life apparently have absolutely no purchase on Roger whatsoever. Okay? So this is a moment that really connects, in our minds, Roger with sadistic pleasure, that desire to hurt and to kill and to derive pleasure from that. And then this reaches its culmination, its apotheosis in chapter 11 with the killing of poor old Piggy. The quote is, Roger, with a sense of delirious abandonment, leaned all his weight on the lever or lever. Okay. Notice the connection there. So the quote from the killing of the sow is, Roger found a lodgment for his point and began to push till he was leaning with his whole weight. And then this is the language that Golding uses in the killing of Piggy. Roger, with a sense of delirious abandonment, leaned all his weight on the lever or lever. Okay. So almost word for word identical, leaned all his weight in both situations. He was leaning all of his weight on the spear, and then he's leaning all of his weight on the spear when it kind of levers off the boulder in the direction of Piggy, which knocks him off the cliff and he falls to his tragic and untimely death. But note the way Roger does this. He does it with a sense of delirious abandonment. Delirious. He's kind of losing control of himself. Okay. Abandonment there, losing himself in a moment of almost sexualized kind of orgiastic bliss or pleasure. This is, again, a development of the sadism that we see. It's hinted at in the stone throwing incident with Henry. It's there very obviously when he is involved in the killing and the sodomizing of the sow, and it's now here very explicitly in the killing of Piggy. He leans all his weight. He commits totally. All of his body is involved in this. It's the sort of ultimate act of surrendering to bloodlust and sadistic desires, and the now total breakdown of any notion of civilized restraint. So we've gone from that space in which he dare not throw, the taboo of the old life, really invisible, but still incredibly strong. His arm being conditioned, that's gone. That's gone with the killing of the sow. Okay, Roger found a lodgment for his point and began to push till he was leaning with his whole weight. And then again, the culmination of this is not just killing animals in this way, but actually then attacking and killing a human being. Roger, with a sense of delirious abandonment, leaned all his weight on the lever. So there is a kind of amorality about Roger. It's not just that he's kind of a bad person, it's that he seems to lack any sort of developed moral sense. And we get that all the way back in chapter 4, his arm being conditioned. He's been trained through punishment to do the right thing. But there's no sense throughout the entirety of the book that he has even really the beginnings of a developed moral sense, a true sense of right and wrong. Okay. And that Golding demonstrates this from chapter 4 all the way through to chapter 11 with the actual killing of Piggy, and Roger's obviously direct involvement in that. So we want to be making these connections. Now, Roger links in obviously with civilization versus savagery, his sadistic desire, and it links in, again, everything comes back to this with Lord of the Flies, that question, that issue of innate evil. There's something off. There's something deeply wrong about Roger. And unfortunately, I think in many ways, that civilization that knew nothing of him, that the way in which I think we can perhaps complacently assume that we are producing people with a developed moral sense, that we are civilized, that we aren't savages, okay, anymore, that we've moved beyond that. We're not animals, okay? We're, to quote from the book, we're the English, and the English are best at everything. That's seen as so misguided and woefully complacent. And through Roger, I think Golding critiques that sense of arrogant, hubristic complacency. Okay, we don't really know what we're doing. We don't really know what we're producing, and that's really typified and exemplified by the character of Roger. So I hope that was useful. I'll be doing more of these episodes where we make connections across the course of the text, whether it's Lord of the Flies or Macbeth or the poems, whatever it might be, A Christmas Carol, and we link quotations, because that's going to be the hallmark of real high quality essay responses in the exam, and something that we want to be practicing, reminding ourselves of, not seeing quotations as these isolated little islands, but actually seeing real continuities between each quotation. So I hope that that's been a useful episode for you. Hope that's got you thinking about Roger all over again. We want to be revising. As of today, recording this podcast, I believe there are 13 days left until paper 1. Okay. Now, I know Lord of the Flies is in paper 2, but there's not long left either until paper 2. So we need to be making sure we're doing our daily revision homeworks, working hard, and also using these episodes as a supplement to that. So, as always, thank you so much for listening, and I will see you on the next one.